friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. We are going to talk about the 7 books that I have already read in the month of May. Crazy, 7 books. We're halfway through the month right now, and I'm so excited about the books I'm going to continue reading this month. And I have had 2 5-star reads already this month. So spectacular reading so far. A lot of pretty quick-paced reads and books that have captured my attention. I have absolutely loved my reading so far this month. 3 of the books that I read this month were audiobooks. The first one I will tell you about I cannot share because it was for the BookTube prize, and that is A Single Thread by Tracy Chevalier. So I'll put a picture. I did finish this, but I cannot talk about it until after this round of the BookTube prize is completed. The second audiobook that I listened to is The Worst Best Man, and I don't actually know the author's name of this. I had heard about it on Sarah's Bookshelves Live podcast. Someone was talking about it as a romance that's a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun. It didn't blow me away, but it was a fun story. So we follow the main character, who is a wedding planner. It turns out a couple years previous to the time of this story, she was jilted at the altar. She was all ready to walk down the aisle in her dress, all ready to go, and her fiance bailed and said he couldn't do it. Sent his brother to go let her know that he wasn't coming. Fast forward a couple years later, she's a fantastic wedding planner, very successful in her business. She's up for this job at a hotel running their wedding coordinating position, whatever. It's a great opportunity for her, and she is paired up with a marketing person because she's competing for this job against one other person. So these 2 brothers, her ex-fiance and the best man who spilled the news, his brother, they are the marketing people paired up with these 2 for this position. So of course there's lots of working together, there's lots of traveling to different sites. He has to really get to know her to find out who she is and what kind of package they're going to put together. Lots of time spent together, lots of fun banter. It was pretty steamy, and at times more steamy than I normally like to read, but the story was fun. I appreciated that they had a lot of conversation, that it wasn't just, you look good, let's hop into bed together. It was really a lot of getting to know each other and a lot of consent, which was awesome. A lot of talking through things, and I like it when there's a lot of communication and getting to know each other to build that chemistry, that sexual chemistry. So it was a lot of fun. Didn't blow me away. I think I ended up giving it 3 stars, maybe 4, but I think 3 stars. A fun, lighthearted romance, if that's what you're looking for during these days. The third audiobook that I listened to, actually own, it's The Cruelest Month by Louise Penny. This is the 3rd book in the 3 Pines mystery series, where Amand Gamache is the inspector who is solving a mystery. So in this one, the people of 3 Pines gather. It takes place around Easter, so it happens in April, which is appropriate for this time of year, I think. It's from my sequel shelf. I'm working through this series very slowly. But this one, the people of 3 Pines gather on Good Friday, and they end up having a seance in the little bed and breakfast kind of place. I guess there's a visitor to the town who is psychic in some way and helps them to hold this seance. It wasn't creepy enough. She said it was too happy where they were, so they decide to have it in the old Hadley place, which was a setting prevalent in one of the first 2 books. I think the first book, actually. And now it's kind of a decrepit house that nobody really goes to. It has a very foreboding presence in the town, and this is where they decide to hold the seance the next night, so on the Saturday following. During this second seance, one of the women dies. So, heart attack, murder, you tell me. Well, the book will tell you, because that's what this whole thing is about. I love the characters still in this series. I've really enjoyed all 3 of the first books. I have heard that around book 4 or 5 is when it really picks up and gets amazing, which is awesome because I have really enjoyed the first 3, so I'm looking forward to it getting even better. I think Louise Penny does a great job with giving her characters so much depth. Each of the characters in the town And I think that's going to continue as you get to know them better throughout the series, because they all take place in the same town. So we kind of follow these characters through the series. Armand Gamache is a man full of integrity and kindness and wisdom and discernment, and his team members, some you love, some you don't. But I really liked the relationship between his team members in this one in particular. There were some very touching moments. I loved there's two kind of side plots, one involving Armand Gamache and what's happening back in Montreal at the police headquarters station, the Sûreté. I don't know how to speak French, so the headquarters of his office. There's some backstory there that we are getting kind of on the side of this murder investigation, but then also within the town there are a couple side stories happening as well, and it all kind of weaves together so beautifully, and I'm really enjoying the audiobooks in particular. So far it's been the same narrator, I believe, for all three. I don't know if that's going to continue, but I'm looking forward to continuing with A Rule Against Murder, which is next. So that was a fantastic read, and I gave this one 4 stars. Another 4-star read that I read this month was Lakeshire Park. This is by Megan Walker, and I read this through NetGalley. So thank you so much to the publisher Shadow Mountain for allowing me to read it through NetGalley. Fantastic, fun, proper romance. I loved this book so much. It was so good. Just what the doctor ordered. In this one, we follow sisters Amelia and Clara. They are living with their stepfather, who's not very kind. His health is failing, and he is not going to provide for these two sisters at all. He doesn't have any love for them. He doesn't care about them at all. He kind of feels like they ruined his life. They accept an invitation to a fortnight at this other estate where there's kind of a hopeful beau for the younger of the two sisters, and there's a house party in a sense there for a couple weeks, and so that we spend most of the book at this other estate. On the way to this estate, they stop to buy a pair of gloves in the little village where the estate is, and the older sister Amelia goes in to buy the gloves, and she runs into this brash, arrogant, good-looking fella who ends up, of course, being a guest at this estate as well. It just had so much chemistry without the steaminess of sex scenes, which I absolutely love. I got the butterflies in the tummy every time there was some good conversation and banter and moments together. I think I gave it 4 stars and not 5 because it is set kind of in Regency times, and one of the big themes throughout it was that a kiss between two people, if caught, could be incredibly detrimental to somebody's reputation, right? You're ruined if you're caught kissing in public without having an engagement contract or whatever. This is what happened to the two sisters' mom. That's how their mom married their father. So there's question of whether there was love between them at all, or if it was just that moment got caught and she had to go down that road, that path, to protect her reputation. And then that scene happens again later. However, the contradiction is that Amelia and her love interest spend a lot of unchaperoned time together. So that wouldn't have really happened in Regency time. It didn't really fit in this era where if you kiss and you get caught, you could ruin your reputation, and yet they are able to spend all of this alone time together. So it was a little bit like, really, how do they spend so much time either in the stables or out on a ride or all of these other situations where they are alone together? So that is the only reason I took off a star, but it didn't affect my enjoyment of the book whatsoever. I really loved, I thought the writing style was fine. It didn't blow me away, but I really enjoyed reading this book. I flew through it in just a day or two. This one is available now. It was published in April, at the beginning of April. So it's a new release. It's fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I was thrilled to read it, and thank you to NetGalley again for the opportunity to read it. I probably should have started with this one because I think it might have been the lowest rated book that I read so far this month, but I did read By the Book by Julia Sonneborn. This I gave 3 stars to, and it is somewhat of a Persuasion retelling. It's very influenced by the book Persuasion. In this one, we have a young woman who is an English professor at a college, a liberal arts college in Southern California, maybe. She is super smart, on track to be tenured at this college, trying to get her book published is kind of the next step in that process. When it turns out an old flame of hers ends up becoming the president of the college, and they had been engaged when they were both in college. Things didn't work out very well. They had lost track with each other. Now, a decade later, they're back at the same school. It's very much a second chance romance in the same vein as Persuasion. Very influenced by Persuasion, for sure. Does not follow the same plot completely, but there are definitely elements from Persuasion which are in here, which I kind of like that. It wasn't exact, but was a fun retelling. However, the main character doesn't really grow very much, and she gets a little bit annoying. She's quite naive, and I just didn't always find her very believable or endearing, like Anne Elliot is. I think they did this one does a great job in making her family, her immediate family, her sister and father, kind of obnoxious like they are in Persuasion. Not completely obnoxious. Maybe that didn't get pushed quite as much as I would have liked, but I found her herself, what's her name in here? Anne. She has the same name. Anne in this one was slightly annoying by the end. I wanted some more growth and depth in her that I didn't quite get. And so for that reason, I gave it 3 stars. It was a fun retelling. I probably will keep this on my Jane Austen retelling shelf for the fact that there just aren't enough Persuasion retellings. And so I don't know that I'll ever come back to this one, but for now I'm going to keep it. And I would say it's a fun retelling. Go for it if you want to give it a try, but just don't go with very high expectations. And then we have my final 2 books, 6 and 7, that were 5-star reads for me. The first one I read at the very beginning of the month, and this is my Goodreads read-along group pick. So if you haven't read it yet, please pick it up this month because I gave it 5 stars. And that's The Dream Daughter by Diane Chamberlain. I absolutely loved this book. It was so fun. Not fun. It was heartbreaking and compelling and interesting. It does deal, okay, let me back up. The setup of this one is that we follow Carly in the 1970s. She is pregnant, but learns she's pregnant after her husband leaves to go to war. Turns out there are some complications with her pregnancy, and she has the ability to do something to save the life of her child, but it is way beyond the realm of what she thought she could do, and it kind of blows her mind. It blows my mind, and then it doesn't go quite as smoothly as she would have liked or as I would have liked. This book does deal with some time travel, and it does deal with some other surprising things. It is very heartfelt. I love Carly's relationship with her sister, Patty, and brother-in-law, Hunter. It was a beautiful relationship. I love that it deals with a mother and a daughter and the lengths a mother will go to protect and to love her daughter. There were some surprises in here that were huge surprises that I didn't see coming. There were a little... Okay, so it deals with time travel, so you have to suspend belief a little bit. And there are some questions and holes that I feel like any book that has time travel, I'm going to have these questions. And those don't get answered, and I'm okay with that because I found the writing to be so well done, so incredibly compulsive. I read this in 2 days, like in 48 hours I finished this book. I couldn't put it down because I just absolutely had to find out what happened. I was drawn in. I was emotionally connected to the story and to what was happening. I was shocked. I was sad at times. I definitely teared up. I fell in love. Diane Chamberlain is somebody I definitely wanted to read this year. She's one of the 5 authors that I wanted to read in 2020, and now I've done it. And I have 3 or 4 more of her books on my shelves, and now I cannot wait to get to them. I did hear that this one, because of the dealing with time travel, like that's not her MO. Like she doesn't do that in all of her books. This was a little bit of a departure from her norm. So I'm very curious to read another book from her and see if it's just as compelling and just as, if I get connected just as easily because of her writing and storytelling. I think that she does those things really well. So I really enjoyed this one, and I hope that you read it if you wanted to join in with my Goodreads read along this month. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. I'm loving seeing what other people think as they're going through this one throughout the month of May. And finally, I have another 5-star read, and that's As Bright as Heaven by Susan Meisner. Did I say I was going to give this 5 or 4 stars? Now I can't remember. Oh, I can't tell you. Shoot. I wasn't supposed to tell you what I'm giving this one. This is a spoiler, I guess, for my 5-star predictions video. Shoot. I totally forgot about that. This is a book that I predicted would be 5 stars. And now you know that I have given it 5 stars. Dang it, Krista. Anyways, this book, I already knew that I loved Susan Meisner, and I already knew that I love historical fiction. This one happens in 1918 in Philadelphia. So we're in the midst of World War I, and we watch the beginning, the outbreak of the Spanish flu as it comes to Philadelphia. We follow this family of sisters and parents. They move from rural Pennsylvania, Quakertown area into Philadelphia so the father can work with his uncle who directs a funeral home and lives in this funeral home. So this family moves there. The uncle is going to leave the business to his nephew and their family. So they're in Philadelphia. Each of the girls has a very distinct voice. We have 4 different perspectives that we follow in this book, each of the 3 sisters and the mother. And I love that Susan Meisner did such a good job of differentiating each of those voices. They each felt unique and different, and you felt their age. The youngest one at the beginning is 6 or 7 years old, and you really feel her immaturity and just the way that she interprets things. You really see that in the writing, which took you out of it a little bit, but it was very appropriate for that voice. The middle sister kind of has a crush on the neighbor next door, and the older sister is very academic and wants to study and learn to become a doctor. And we follow these girls as the plague hits Philadelphia and how that affects their family. The mother had lost a brother, a baby boy, previously to when the start of this hits. So they're already dealing with grief and already thinking about death and dying and grief and heaven and the future without this little baby who was going to be a part of their family. The mother's perspective in particular really almost personifies death as she thinks about what death means and the character of death and how it works. Very profound conversations, I think, about grief and death and dying and illness in this book. And of course they're at a funeral home, so they're kind of surrounded by it anyways. But then a very eerily similar portrayal of dealing with the pandemic of the Spanish flu and having to wear masks when you go out and staying away from people and just people dying all around them, hospitals being overcrowded, very similar situations in a lot of ways. Yeah, I really, really liked this book. I really liked it. We do follow them through a year or two in that 1918 timeline, and then we kind of jump ahead 5 or 6 years. And towards the end, there's a part 2, and we kind of see each of these characters in the future, or not in the future, in that future timeline, and we get a little bit of the Roaring Twenties and speakeasies in there, a little bit, and how these events of the flu and dealing with death and grief has affected them years later. I think it was so well done. I knew so many of you knew that I would love this book, and it has been recommended to me over and over. It is on my 2020 recommendations cart because so many of you said to read this one. I'm so glad that I finally did. It was fantastic. I absolutely loved it, and I need to read more Susan Meisner because she's wonderful. All right, I've talked about them for quite a while, which is why I'm glad I didn't wait till the end of the month, because I feel like I would have forgotten a lot of that stuff. Future editing Krista hopping in to say a couple things. First of all, I forgot to mention that I did buddy read As Bright as Heaven with Katie from Like Between Words and Amanda at the Curly Reader, and I absolutely loved reading that with them. It was such a fantastic experience. But I also realized as soon as I got done filming that I forgot a book. I did complete The Girl He Used to Know by Tracy Garvis Grays as well, and I read this with Chloe from Always Booked, and had such a fun time reading with her as well. We read this in just one day, literally start to finish in one day. I think I started 1 or 2 chapters the day before, or a couple days before, because I forgot when we were supposed to start. And she read a couple chapters the night before, but then we basically read the whole thing in a day. The chapters are super short. We follow 2 perspectives, Annika and Jonathan in this one. And guys, I don't normally say that I have book boyfriends. I don't usually get like butterflies about guys in books, but Jonathan is fantastic. From now on, whenever I have that question, I'm picking Jonathan because he was so lovely. So Annika and Jonathan knew each other in college. She really struggled. She is untested, but behaves as though she's very high functioning, but on the autistic spectrum. Very socially awkward, can't read people, deals with change very difficultly, has a hard time with sensory things like tags in her clothing and the material that clothes are made out of. But she is taken out of school when she's quite young to be homeschooled, but then goes off to college on her own, kind of, and joins the chess club and meets Jonathan, where they begin a friendship and then fall in love. And then we don't know exactly what happens, but we kind of go back and forth with timelines. So now we're like 10 or so years in the future, and they run into each other in a grocery store, and they have not communicated at all in the last 10 years. So we know that they have a past, and we throughout the book learn about that past, and we learn what happened. And the tone of this book all the way through, I almost wanted to call it slow, but it didn't feel slow because we read it in a day. So it was very readable, and we kept moving through it, but it was very gentle is the word that I kept saying as I was talking with Chloe. It was very gentle, very tender. The relationship between these two was just so beautiful. They were so filled with kindness. Annika's roommate was super kind. I just loved the side characters. I loved that we got a glimpse into Annika's parents and the way that she was brought up at home, and her brother. But then the book kind of takes a turn at like the 75% mark or so. The last part of this book happens around a kind of major world event, and it changes the tone of the book completely. Not necessarily all in a bad way, but it was a little bit abrupt for me, and I could kind of see it coming a little bit, and there was a few things at the end that didn't seem to fit with the story. However, I love Annika's growth throughout this book. I love how she adapts and changes and becomes stronger and finds her voice and acceptance of herself throughout the story, especially between college and 10 years later, how she learns to be her best self and also adapt in social situations. And I love Jonathan's story. I love how when they reconnect, how that new relationship kind of grows and blossoms. And then I love, especially towards the end, even though it was a different tone and much more intense, yeah, I really enjoyed this book very much, and I ended up giving it 4 stars, and I didn't want to leave it out because I didn't want to wait to have to try to remember all that. So I'm throwing this one in there, and I'm also going to throw in this one, but you're going to hear about it in the vlog that I'm filming this weekend, because I did finish this one today, and it is the 15th, so I'm counting it. I finished 5 Feet Apart by Rachel Lippincott with Mike Daughtry and Tobias Ionkanis. It was a screenplay that Rachel Lippincott novelized. Is that a word? Is that a verb? Anyways, it's about this is a YA contemporary about 2 teens who have CF. The whole thing takes place inside of a hospital, and when you have cystic fibrosis, you cannot be around other people who have cystic fibrosis. It could be very detrimental to you, and the male lead in this one actually has some sort of bacteria that makes him even more dangerous to be around, and he is no longer on the lung transplant list because of this bacteria. It's not something that will go away. He's in a drug study, and of course they fall in love, and that's very difficult because they can't be near each other. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I'm very interested to go back now when this first came out to read some reviews on Instagram, especially of, I followed Read with Kat, I think. I don't know if her page is still up. I think I'm not sure she uses it anymore, but I know she reviewed this and she has cystic fibrosis. So I'm very curious to see now, to remember again what she said about it. I can't remember, just because she has a more personal take on it than I do. I have no idea how accurate or how this worked for people who actually have CF. I found it interesting. It was sweet. I did tear up a little bit at one part, but again, I just didn't love it, and I think that's because I don't tend to love YA contemporaries, so I did give it 3 stars. All right, back to the wrap up of this video. I'm still making my way through The Hero of Ages. I'm at page 500, so I just have a little bit left. I'm buddy reading this with Burrowing into Books with Emily on Instagram, my buddy on Instagram. So I'm looking forward to finishing this month. So there you have it. These are the 4 that I have. These 4 plus the other 3 that I don't have copies of are the books that I've read so far this month. I would love to hear from you if you have read any of these, or if you're surprised or agree with my thoughts on any of them. If you are interested in picking up any of them based on my talk today, based on this video, if you are interested in them, I would love to hear that as well. Let's chat down in the comments below. You guys know I love talking with you down there. Give this video a big thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will be talking to you in another video very soon. Bye.